Hello and welcome to another installment of our Women in STEM series. My name is Kaylee Peel and I'm Manager of Strategic Partnerships for the Linda Hall Library. Today our guest is Poojya Anantharam from MRIGlobal. Poojya, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
To begin this conversation, would you mind giving a brief overview on your trajectory when it comes to what brought you to be at MRIGlobal today? What was your education like? What did that look like for you?
I have an undergraduate degree in biology, and then I decided to take a break because I thought I didn't want to go do more school. But then shortly after, I went back to graduate school for a PhD in toxicology. A big part of me working at MRI Global was that I went to many networking events and conferences, and I met some great people at MRI that have helped bring me here, and that's kind of how I ended up here.
So, what was kind of the impetus for your interest in STEM industry growing up? And were there any figures, either historical or people in your personal life, that kind of guided you down that road?
Historically, I would say there's probably not a lot of exposure to female figures in STEM, but personally, unfortunately, I followed my dad's footsteps, and he was very much involved in the sciences, and then I followed along. Picking a career is a very difficult process, and if you don't know what's out there, you don't know what you can do. And toxicology was definitely not something on my radar, and I learned about it through various programs at Iowa State, and that's kind of how I got into it.
I think that's a really good point. So I think growing up in the Midwest, but also you're right, not having a lot of exposure to certain fields, it's awesome that you were able to find the field that you're interested in. You were able to pursue a career in that
Definitely.
way. Being from the Midwest and now being in Kansas City, what has your experience been as a woman and a woman of color in the STEM industry, and has that changed over the course of your career?
I believe it definitely has changed. When I first started graduate school, I was not as experienced, and so you question your abilities and what you think you can do and what you maybe can do or don't line up. After moving to Kansas City, I think I struggled with a lot of imposter syndrome because you don't know if you can do it. You don't know if you're qualified. When you get on calls or work with many different people of very diverse backgrounds in science, you question your ability. And now I try to reassure myself that I am qualified to be here and tell that little voice in my head, it's okay, you got this.
Mm-hmm.
And that takes a lot of practice because I realize that voice in my head has been ingrained there for years. And to unlearn some of the unhealthy thought processes has been hard, but I work at it every day.
I think that's super important, and that speaks to a lot of experiences of different women in various industries, but specifically in STEM, right?
Absolutely.
And we're talking about the need for exposure in certain jobs, tackling imposter syndrome, and kind of being kind to ourselves as we go through that process. What are some other things that you'd like to see our community do in terms of supporting women and marginalized groups to get more people in STEM?
I think providing opportunity is the biggest thing. If there's no opportunity, then it's much harder for women and people of color to get into these fields. And so showing children as young as, middle school, hey, look, this is something you can do. And retrain their brains because they've already been trained at that point to see certain career paths as mainly for men and showing them no, that's not true, it can be for you as well. And I think that's important.
I think that's important too. And the library is doing a few different initiatives that are trying to tackle that a bit. So we've got our Kansas City Invention Convention, our How Do I Become series that kind of, the Invention Convention is connecting young people to mentors and exposing them to STEM and STEMming at a young
That's
age.
great.
The How Do I Become series is exposing different career paths and getting them connected, getting students connected to more of those near peer professionals to learn about their trajectories and what is it education or certification? What does that look like and how can they get there? So I agree. I think that's very important. If you could talk to a middle school person, or if you were able to, if you had the opportunity to talk to younger people who might be interested in pursuing careers in STEM, what is something that you would want them to know?
That's such a hard one because I think about what I would have wanted to hear, and I think looking back, I don't even know what I would have wanted to hear at that age. But I want to tell them that they can do anything that they want to do. You can do anything that you are passionate about. I think that's really important. And sometimes our trajectories change and our passions change, and that's okay. I thought I was going to be a medical doctor in a hospital, and I am not. That's okay. I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
And learning to accept you for who you are, I think, is a very big part of that.
I do have a follow-up question about what you just said, though. So, when did that split happen for you? You wanted to be a doctor, and you are now not now in toxicology. When was that for you? And was that an easy choice? Was it kind of a difficult thing for you to grapple with? Would you mind sharing a little bit about
I
that?
can absolutely share that. I think growing up as a young Indian woman, there are expectations that we put on ourselves that we don't even realize. And I think in my head, I thought my family wanted me to go be a medical doctor. I am now a doctor, just not a medical doctor. But I think in college, I struggled with kind of finding myself because I'd come from this household that was very Indian. And then I learned to find myself with this double life that I had lived with, outside of the house and inside the house. And so I struggled. And I realized that being a medical doctor would require a lot more time and effort because I did not do well in college, to be quite honest. And so at that point, I kind of took a step back and reevaluated it, and I realized I don't know that that's what I really wanted. And I have always been involved in research, and I did a lot of side projects for the university. And so I was in neuroscience, and I kind of was like, wait, maybe this is what I really want to do. I know it well. And I kind of switched paths. And, my family was very accepting. But I had put this pressure on myself without even knowing it. And so I have now learned that they are proud of me, and it's okay that I didn't do what I thought they wanted me to do.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think that's important for a lot of the younger audiences that might be watching, right? Talking about the concept of fear of failure, which I think a lot of us have, particularly women. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves to be the best in all cases, but being flexible and open-minded and what that career can look like, because there are so many different careers within STEM that a lot of people don't know about yet that just need to be tapped into. So I appreciate you being candid with that.
Yes.
And from your point of view, what does it look like? What does the future of STEM look like? Not maybe just in the regional community, but at large, as we've seen this progress in our lifetimes when it comes to women in STEM fields. What do you hope to see, and what are you excited about?
I think the first word that popped up in my head was diversity. And I don't mean just in the sense that, yes, of course, race, but I also mean different ways of thinking. I think everyone's experiences shape them to think a certain way, and that is different. You and I may think differently, but coming together and putting those different ways of thinking together is really what will help us solve a lot of these world issues that we are working toward. I think having that will really elevate us and provide solutions for our future.
I totally agree with you, and I appreciate your time, Pooja. Thank you so much for being here. And I think MRI is very happy and lucky to have you. I'm excited to see the great things that come out of your organization and you. So
Thank you so much.
Yeah.